ignore that. Welcome to How to Make So You Want to Make a Splash. It's our PR and marketing panel. My name is Alex Calvin. I'm the editor of PC Games Insider, which is Steel Media's PC B2B brand, which launched last month. So I'm a journalist. Would you mind just going around and saying a bit about yourselves?
Yeah, sure. If I can borrow your mic. Hi, my name is Keith Stewart. I am the video games editor for The Guardian. So I take care of, write on commission all of our writing about games, and I've been doing that for 20 years. And I'm also the author of a novel this year called Boy Made of Blocks.
Which is actually a really good novel, by the way. Read it. Get it from Amazon. We did. My name's Jackie Vors. I'm the CEO of a PR agency called Demoso, and we were founded to really concentrate on digital, mobile, and social. And a lot of our clients are games developers, games publishers, and also the service providers to games developers and publishers, like development platforms or ad networks and stuff like that.
I'm Mariella. I'm from Imperia Online. I started the Department of Marketing and Business Development almost 5 years ago in my company. We are actually the biggest studio in Bulgaria. We are 180 people, and we have 20 games. We started with the browser Imperia Online, and now we have lots of mobile titles.
Fantastic. Well, the thinking behind this panel was very much PC. Video games in general, I've never been busier. PC in particular. So basically, if you've spent loads of time and effort making a video game, how do you get people to actually pay attention to it through traditional press or influencers or whatever? So I guess the first question would be to Mariella and Jackie more. But that's, what were your top tips for developers for sort of getting the word out there about their video game?
Yeah, maybe first to find the right Facebook groups and to post not just download this new game, but something like a story behind what they did. And also it's a good thing to have a blog where you can post all the new details about the game content, even if it's not ready, just some hints what you're doing. So there would be a great buzz after that. And whenever you have a trailer ready, you have to post it, but let's say in every social media the way it should be, like in Twitter with the right 2 or 3 hashtags, in Instagram with the right link in the bio, in Facebook not just reposting from YouTube but uploading the whole trailer in Facebook. And of course you should find and research the right influencers and journalists that will help you, and then to try to get reach through emails and tweets. Yeah.
I agree. I think one of the main problems that we find when people have been developing their games is they come to us when the game is done, and they haven't really thought about anything to do with promotion or marketing, and they've usually spent all of their money on huge kind of development work, but haven't actually thought about how they're going to get that out. And I always say to people who come and talk to me, your game is actually your first marketing tool. You have to think about how you talk to people through your game before you even start promoting. And Mariella's absolutely right. The story behind what you do is really, really important. So when you start out, keep a log, keep a video diary. Developer diaries are things that we work with a lot in terms of promoting games. So I think that's really important.
Also makes it much more relatable to the audience. I mean, one example of that recently was Ubisoft E3 with when they announced Mario and Rabbids, and they had the developer there in the audience, and that created a real sort of personal connection with the people watching, which I think a lot of even big companies, they've missed that out.
Yeah, we launched a mobile game, a CCG from Tequila Mobile, and these card games, the collectible card games, the artwork was amazing in it, and all the way through we kept video diaries of how the artists were actually drawing the cards, and then we actually got printed cards to give out to people as part of the promotion. So keeping track of, as you say, creating a real connection between the developer and the audience is important.
Cool. It's probably more one for you, Keith. But when you have a developer approach you for coverage, or they just email you or whatever, I guess what advice would you offer to people for making a journalist who, we get thousands of emails a day. How do you make that email stand out?
Okay, so I'm not sure email is the best line anyway. Yeah, it is. Just to reiterate what these two have said, it's so true. Everything in this world is about personal relationships, and we live in an industry now, the games industry, the marketplaces are hugely dehumanized. So if you look at Steam or you look at the App Store, these are not human spaces, and everything in life is about human relationships. So yeah, your game is only part of your story. So when you're approaching the press saying, I've got this game, is only 50% of the story. The rest of the story is your story. Your story is creators. So what you've got to do is make it clear who you are and why you're making this game. Like the best pitches I get are from people who have an unusual story or an interesting story about why they're making games. And you should never play that down. So have a really, really good website. Use Vlambeer's press kit if you don't have anything of your own. So Vlambeer, the Dutch developer, has a brilliant press kit which allows you to put lots of assets on the web so that we can get hold of them. Tell journalists who you are, what you've worked on before, where you come from, where your studio is. These are all important pieces of background information that I use when I write stories. Approach people in a personal way. If you're using email or Twitter or Facebook or whatever, find out the person on the site or on the on the magazine or whatever. Find the name of the person and communicate to them personally. Don't send emails that say "Dear Sir," / "Madam." Never, ever, ever do that in any point in your life. Never do that. Address people personally. Go up to people at events like this and talk to them, communicate with them. Those are the key ways. Personalize everything you do. Make sure, if you have screenshots on your website, you have 5 really, really good ones, but also keep some behind, keep some videos behind, keep stories behind, so that if you do attract someone from the press, make sure you have things to give them that no one else has. Everybody in my line of work is looking for the story that will make them remembered. There's a great story actually on videogamer.com last week about a small studio based in Siberia. And I don't know what their game is like, but the story is about what it's like to make a game in the coldest city on Earth. And I think that's fascinating to me. That is a story. It's almost more important than the game to me. So yeah, make it personal. Allow people to understand your backgrounds and never use "Sir," "Madam" in any of your communications.
I think you touched on a really good point there, because a lot of people make a big mistake of not actually researching the people that they're speaking to. And it's the most frustrating thing to a busy journalist like yourself, to have somebody come to you with something that was really not interesting, not relevant, and it's something you're not interested in. So I think it's really important, if you do reach out to press yourselves, to make sure that you actually understand what that journalist likes, for starters, as well.
And to influencers as well, like YouTubers, there'll be a certain type of game that they play, and if you've got a real-time strategy game and you go to a YouTuber or a magazine or a website that specializes in like match 3 puzzlers or whatever, you're completely wasting your time in theirs. So,
absolutely.
Yeah.
And that storyline that you were telling, a lot of people don't think their stories are interesting, and they genuinely are. We launched 1010 from Gram Games, and they were literally down to their last $25,000. They had no money to pay the payroll the next year, but their head was an ex-shepherd. And that helped us get some standout, press for them. So you just find things that are quirky and different, and something that will give some colour to a story. Because ultimately, we're all telling stories, whether it's be through our games or whether what we're writing about. It's all about story and what's interesting.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, games journalism is very much moving away from games as a technical thing, as a consumer product, and towards human stories, like you say. So I want to know if you were a shepherd, or if you were a psychologist, or a philosopher. That's much more interesting to me than how many polygons there are in your game world.
Well, touched on an interesting topic there about influencers as well as the traditional press. I guess I'm kind of curious from your standpoint, like what you'd say sort of the value of the traditional press versus YouTubers, influencers is these days.
When I talk to people nowadays, I mean, I've been in PR for a long time, too many years. And when I first started in PR, I mean, literally, you could just take a journalist out for a nice lunch, and that would be it. You'd have a few stories placed. It's just not like that anymore. And I call it multi-channel communications. There are so many different touch points that people can find out about things from, whether it be SlideShare, whether it be social media, as you mentioned, Mariella, whether it's traditional press, or we call print press, online press, vloggers, bloggers. there are so many different channels that you can use to get your message across. And what we do as a professional PR company is we try to cover all those channels, but in a relevant way. So, you know, there are some, as we've talked about, there are some bloggers who won't want to be writing about match 3 games, but you know there will be very special niche interest groups like you touched on, Mariella, with the Facebook groups. You know, when we were launching a CCG, you know, the CCG is a very niche game, so it was very easy for us to identify the kind of channels. But it isn't just traditional print media anymore; it's multi-channel.
I completely agree here because from our experience with ProSieben, the television in Germany, actually we did a campaign on TV with great advertising, but it won't work if at that same time we didn't have top banners in all of their websites. So they had 3 game websites that were really giving this kind of same banner content that's related to the TV ad. So people were actually, after that, registering, and it was easy to track and see what's the result. That's one of the main things that's differentiating the digitalized PR from the traditional one, that we can see the actual result. The tools that we are using and the CRM systems are very different than the Excel spreadsheets that were before. So, yeah.
I was kind of curious as well, like, I guess, like, how doing doing PR for PC video games might differ from, say, for example, mobile or console games. Or does it?
I really don't think it does. I think, you know, when you're promoting anything, the same skill sets are applied, whether it's PC, console, whether it's us talking about a mobile ad network or us talking about a mobile game. It's still the same skill sets apply, and it's coming back to that core essence, which is the storytelling and doing your research and knowing, you know, where people are consuming, where people are finding out the information that they need in order to make their purchase decision. I mean, we all know that discoverability is the hardest thing in mobile gaming, and there are hundreds of mobile games out there. And I'm actually sitting here as poacher turned gamekeeper as well, because I'm actually developing my own mobile games as well. So I face all the same issues that everyone here faces in terms of how do I get my games noticed. And one of my things is creating that story behind my games.
Cool. As well, I was wondering whether you'd recommend, again, an in-house PR and marketing person for an indie studio, or whether it's worth teaming up with an agency.
I probably turn away 9 out of 10 people who come to me asking me to do PR for them, because I think a lot of people look at PR as user acquisition. It's not. PR will never get you, you know, stories will never get you the downloads. User acquisition is a completely different art form. What PR does is it backs up your reputation, it helps you in many other ways, but it gives you credibility, and it helps enhance all the activity you're doing in terms of advertising or user acquisition. With Gram Games, for example, I mean, a lot of the work we've done with Gram is not necessarily to get their users, but it's actually to help them grow the company, to take their company global. So they started off in Turkey, and we've helped them grow their offices across the world. PR helps you recruit people. PR helps you be able to then launch new titles and stuff like that. So it's not just about user acquisition. I think that's important.
I was going to say, yeah, I mean, if you, rather than having a dedicated PR person, I would say have a community person, just someone who's able to express the ideas of your game to a wider group of people. And often, as a person in the press, and also when I've spoken to lots of YouTubers, what they're looking for is games with active communities. And so, if you have someone who can encourage and communicate with the community, you're more likely to, through that, attract the press and attract YouTubers, because we're kind of interested in things that interest other people. Like, people attract people. So yeah, have someone who can speak to your community and engage with that community is almost as good in some ways as having a dedicated press person, I think, because I'm looking out for things which people engage with.
For us as a studio, it's always been probably the in-house PR activities that we're doing in my team. But I actually think that when you're going to a local market, that's pretty different than what you would expect to see in European gamers. We are using agencies and we do work with outsourcing. We have partners, for example, in Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, and actually talked about it before, like 1 hour ago. So we do think that the influencers are actually the right way to get the mobile audience listen to you because they feel attached like personally to the person that's making the story behind whatever they want to say. We don't want to advertise directly to the mobile users to download the game. And the other thing is that we have lots of PR activity in terms of, like you mentioned, not just user acquisition, but getting awards or getting notice through different kind of ways, like we don't want just to get new players. We really want to have brand recognition. And I believe that this authentic way that we want to do it, because our players, the MMO ones, are with niche, especially the ones that are playing Imperial Online. So that's why we decided to make it in-house, mostly.
Cool. We've actually burned through the talking points I prepared very, very quickly. So if there are any other areas we want to talk about, maybe we could open up the floor.
Yeah.
Cool. Any questions, anyone?
There's one thing I would say. Also, you talk about engagement and building reputations through PR and marketing, but there's also re-engagement as well. And one of the successful campaigns we worked on recently was for Clash of Kings. They had obviously millions of users, but they did a campaign specifically to focus on re-engaging those users, which again is another good way to use PR.
It might sound like a random question, but does the timing of an announcement, like in time of day, affect change how effective it is, basically? So I've heard PR people in the past talk about how the best time of day to announce something is 2 p.m. in the UK, because then you get the UK, Europe, you get America just waking up as well. That is the case when you're looking at press wires, and you have to think about people's deadlines and when they're writing and when they need to submit. But I think it's increasingly less effective to use press wires and those kind of expensive newswire services. I think if you're doing your own PR, which I very much encourage most companies to do, is to just really understand your audience and understand who you're talking to. So if I was to contact Keith, I wouldn't go to him with something that wasn't going to be interesting to him. Yeah. And I'd know that he wants a story, and I'd know that he's interested in cold development studios in Siberia. Yeah. Because I'd have read... Pete Guardian. Because I would have read what he's written. And I know it sounds really crazy, but PR is just common sense. There's no dark art to it. You read what people are writing, and you contact them and you say, hey, I seen you wrote this. Would you like to write about this? And usually if you're contacting somebody like that, then they're not going to say, go away, I hate you. They're going to say, thank you for reading what I've written and understanding what I like.
Yeah. Oh, no, I would definitely say if you're a small studio or even a medium-sized studio, the idea of making a news announcement is a complete misnomer and a bit of a waste of time, especially if it involves Kickstarter. Never send out press releases saying, hey, we're kickstarting a new game, because honestly, nobody reads them. And it's a waste of your time and your resources. I think these days, it's about building. It's about building a community and building relationships and building interest in your games, and you do that by getting out there, going to events like this, going to creative events, going to things like Stugan, or going to the Nordic Games Conference, or going to the brilliant Feral Vector in Bradford in England with lots of other indie developers, getting known in that community, establishing a Twitter presence and building understanding of who you are. Sending out press releases, I don't think in this day and age, if you're a small studio, really works. In terms of timing, if you want to contact a journalist or a YouTuber, never send emails on Monday mornings or Friday afternoons. They will not get read. I think Tuesdays are usually pretty good because you've got over Monday and you're ready for new stuff. But yeah, don't send emails out in the morning. Don't send them in the middle of the night. Target an area and again, make them personal. Make it clear that you understand who the person is who's receiving your email. Don't do that creepy thing where I get a lot of emails where it goes, hey, I saw you wrote an article on this game studio in Siberia. Well, I once played in the snow. Here's my new game. That's kind of stalkerish thing. It's good to say, I know you write about this sort of thing and this sort of thing and this sort of thing, but don't make it really obvious. Don't make the really obvious connection because it kind of makes people feel uncomfortable. So. Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to add to that because you talked about community, and it's something that I notice at events like this all the time. The actual mobile games community of developers are actually really helpful and do help each other and do share information and do share success stories. And I think, if you see one of your rivals, I suppose, getting great success, there is no harm in just asking them. And I think I've seen a lot of people just share successes that way within this community.
Well, this might be a bit of like a left field question, but I'm kind of curious about how you feel about GIFs to like market and sort of show off a game. Because recently there's a game from Devolver called Ruiner, and they've been using these really flashy short GIFs to show off like the style of the game. And also last year you had Behold the Kickman from Dan Marshall, which that became a game because it took off on Twitter for being a fun little GIF. I guess I'm kind of curious, like if you think that's an effective way to show your game off to press and consumers.
I think we're heading into an industry now where kind of long-form narratives aren't working quite as well. So if you take, for example, if on The Guardian, when we distribute videos through our Facebook and Twitter channels now, we do those, what everybody does, like BuzzFeed does it, Verge does it, which is very, very short videos which can be played silently with subtitles if necessary. But most of The Guardian's video content is less than 2 minutes and often only around 20 seconds. So yeah, GIFs actually can communicate an enormous amount of information about your game, visually and through subtitles, within 6 seconds. And it's multi-channels. So you can put that on Twitter, on all the social media channels, and it gives you a little bit of a flavour of your studio and your game. So yeah, I think GIFs really work. We live in a meme culture now. People have like blip for attention spans. So I think the GIF is perfect for that. So definitely, I would use anything at your disposal which is short and funny.
As long as it's done right.
Yeah.
There's nothing worse than a really badly executed good idea, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and be careful about how you. Be careful how you use social media. And like tone is really, really important. It's very, very, very easy to get something tonally slightly wrong and suddenly have millions and millions of people trolling and denouncing you. If you ever read John Ronson's book, So You've Been Publicly Shamed, the internet is a dangerous place, and you have to think very carefully about what you do. Yeah, you're right.
I completely agree about the tone, because the whole message is actually perceived a different way. If you use, like in the traditional marketing, the tone is very direct. What I've seen in the TV ads before is that they were all about talking about the brand and not about the story behind the actual product. And I think that's what we are telling here, the storytelling and the whole authentic approach is what's making a difference nowadays. And we should work in this direction, all of us.
Yeah, and be careful with your audience as well, and knowing the place as well. Like, sorry, I just talk into it. I can't be bothered to hold it anymore. Sorry. So a joke that works on 4chan won't work on wider distribution channels. That is a very, very important lesson that lots of people have learned. The things you might be able to get away with as a developer on edgy forums, places where shitposting is common, or just crude memetic jokes. Don't try and translate that into a wider place like Twitter or Facebook, because terrible things will happen.
Good advice right there. Terrible things might happen.
Yeah.
Cool. I think that was all my questions. Was there anything else there? Oh yeah.
Okay, so there's a few things. So in text, I'd like to know where your studio is, what games any of your developers have worked on before, and a little bit of background about what the game is, the genre, the platforms, and when it's out. All of that basic stuff which I will use to form a story. I would like at least 5 to 10 good quality in-game screenshots, not title screens, not menu screens, good quality in-game screenshots. If it's got a lead character, have them close to the camera, if you have shots without a good solid thing right in the center of the camera of the screenshot, it won't get used. A couple of videos from YouTubers, so a couple that can go on YouTube that we can embed, so a couple of trailers, maybe even a short let's play that you've made yourselves in the studio, so that it clearly illustrates what your game is about and who the characters are and the narrative. And the promise, the possibility that if I email you, that you will have extra stuff, newer screenshots, just so that I have something that I can use that no one else has got. So yeah, screenshots, a couple of videos, lots of information about the people that work for your company and the idea behind the game. Those are the very basic tenets, and that's why Vlambeer's press kit is really good, because it just has this stencil and you just fill it with stuff and it's exactly right. So.
Also, headshots of the people who are making the game. They're always good for interviews. Like, it creates a nice sort of emotional connection again with between the reader and what they're reading about. It's also good. And also with screenshots, if you're going to put a logo of your game or your studio on the asset, kind of make it quite small, because otherwise they're a nightmare to crop. For when
it will get cropped, or make it a layered image so you can just get rid of it.
That too, actually, that's a great idea. Because they always get cropped. Because otherwise, if on a journalist site, if you have a picture of that with a logo on, it does tend to make the piece look a little bit like advertorially, which is never really good for the overall piece.
Yeah, publicity is more important than protecting your IP if you're a small studio.
And with the headshots as well, I'm sure you'll agree that the very corny kind of staged kind of corporate profile shots really are a thing of the past nowadays. I think people want authentic-looking people shots. They don't want anything that's very staged.
Yeah, not too zany, but not staged. You need to have a medium between the two. Yeah.
Also high-res as well.
Yes, yeah.
Any other questions?
Hello. I will stand by. I mean, I can only speak for myself, but having spoken to other journalists and YouTubers, I almost wouldn't bother with press releases. If you're a small to medium-sized studio, unless you have a gigantic announcement. So you've taken on, for example, Bossa Studios recently just announced they've taken on Chet from Valve. That's a news story because Chet, co-writer of Half-Life, is a massive name. But honestly, I don't think press releases are the solution a lot of the time. It's talking to people via Twitter and at events like this, and generating interest with a community so that we pick up on it. All journalists want to discover stories. They don't want to necessarily be fed them. So I'd like to feel as though I've discovered your game rather than I've gone to my computer and amongst the 300 emails I get a day, look out for a press release. I just don't think it's the way to do things anymore. Not in the culture we have now. It's much more kind of holistic rather than here is a piece of information. If you are going to send out a press release, make it short, make it personal, bullet points, assets, and you're done and you're out of there. But I very, very rarely read them.
I think it's something you said. We live in a short-form society now, and with the rise of Twitter and everything else, literally, when we think about pitching anything, we think about it in 140 characters. Because if you can't get your story across in those 140 characters, you've got a problem.
Yeah.